Reading with your kids.
Hola, niha, konnichiwa, assalamu alaikum, shalom, mahaba, moni muliwanji, namaste, jambo, bienvenidos. Hi, my name is Jedley, and this is the Reading with Your Kids podcast. We're coming to you from the beautiful neighborhood of Reedville in the southwest corner of Boston, Massachusetts. We're so delighted and so very honored that you are joining us in our mission to help families grow closer through reading. Please be sure to subscribe to the show on the iHeartRadio app, on Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, Spotify, wherever you find your podcasts. Our guest today is Dr. Sylvia Earle. She is known as Her Deepness, and she's here to celebrate her beautiful new book. It's called Ocean, A Global Odyssey. Before we invite Dr. Sylvia into the studio, we want to invite you to connect with us on social media. Facebook.com/readingwithyourkids, at Jedley Magic on Twitter, at Reading With Your Kids on Instagram. Check out our Pinterest page, Reading With Your Kids on Pinterest. Where else? Also, you can connect with us by going to our website, readingwithyourkids.com. You can sign up for our free newsletter. You can also hit the contact button to send us a message. Our guest today has been a National Geographic explorer since 1998. She is the founder of Mission Blue, the founder of Deep Ocean Exploration and Research, a founding ocean elder, and I have been told by Fabian Cousteau, is known throughout the ocean explorer world as Her Deepness. Please welcome to the show, Dr. Sylvia Earle. Hey, Dr. Earle, how are you?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm excited. I'm so excited. We're here today talking about Ocean, A Global Odyssey. This is an absolutely spectacular book.
Well, thank you. I worked really hard to try to dive into the stories about the ocean and to bring them to the public in a way that you can literally open the book almost anywhere and see amazing images that we really could not have acquired when I was a child, but today, there they are. Images that reflect the nature of the ocean from the top of the ocean to the deepest parts. And in stories throughout the book, you can pick it up anywhere, and I hope find something that will really excite you about the nature of the part of the planet that keeps us alive.
Yeah, you know, one of the things that I've learned is that, you know, the ocean is so vast, but we've actually explored so little of it. I've been told that we know more about space than we know about the ocean.
Well, there are better maps of Jupiter, Mars, and the moon, and even our own terrestrial planet, part of the planet, than we do about the ocean. About 15% has been mapped with the same kind of accuracy that you expect to see for Earth, that is the Earth part of Earth. But the ocean, we're just really beginning to explore. Kids who think, there's nothing left for me to do, it's all been done. No, it's just beginning. The greatest era of exploration on this planet is really just getting started. Most of it is blue.
That's really, really exciting. And I love just speaking with you for this little bit of time so far. You have a passion and a love for the ocean. What has sparked that?
When I was just 3 years old, I got knocked over by a wave when my parents were taking the family to the beach. And at first it was scary, but then I realized that was fun. And I think my mom saw that big smile on my face, and she let me jump back in, and I've been jumping back in ever since. But it was not just the exhilaration of feeling the energy of the ocean. It was life. The ocean is full of life. There's the impression when you look from the shore that it's a lot of water, which it is, a lot of salty water, which it is, but every spoonful is filled with something. The tiny creatures that are important for the larger creatures, right up to the biggest animals on Earth. Whales, especially the great blue whale, which is the largest animal that's ever lived, and even bigger than dinosaurs by quite a lot. So knowing how amazing that abundance and diversity of life in the ocean has just kept me focused for all my life.
Now, you mentioned that, on the surface, we see a lot of water, and if you're out in the middle of the ocean, you're seeing a lot of water and not much else for miles and miles and miles, but that there's so much more going on beneath the surface of the ocean, and you've spent a lot of time down there. I understand you've actually spent time living underwater. What's that like?
Well, I have thousands of hours as a scuba diver, but more using little submersibles, more than 30 different kinds of submersibles. I mean, it's like saying I've used more than 30 different kinds of cars to get around. But more than that, little submarines can take you where cars cannot go and come back and keep you safe. And living underwater, I've done that now 10 times. The first time was just such a revelation for me because I got to see fish as individuals. I had seen them before, and anybody can do this, diving, even snorkeling. But to spend enough time with them in one place. I remember Jane Goodall spent years living in the forest in Gombe, in Africa. Got to know individual chimpanzees. It was really the first time anyone had spent enough time to really recognize their individual behaviors, their faces. Well, fish have faces too. But normally we don't have the opportunity to recognize that. And not only their faces, but they have different behaviors, different attitudes. Some are shy, some are more inquisitive, and just like kids. Some are really, out there running around looking at everything they can see. Others kind of sit back and watch, and that's true with fish too. It was just a transformational experience for me the first time, and it's been reinforced every other time, even with the short visits I have using scuba.
Wow, that's fascinating. Do you remember the first fish that you got to know? That sounds like such a silly question, but I'm listening to you, and you're telling us that the fish have these individual personalities and
Yes.
behaviors. Do you remember that first fish that you met?
Well, it was actually a group of 5 angelfish.
Ooh.
They're such curious, gentle-looking, actually behaving creatures. I would get up really early in the morning, like right now here in San Francisco. I'm up really early, and just as dawn was breaking, and from different parts of the reef, these 5 angelfish would get together and swim around. They spend the day together, and at night, at dusk, they'd go their separate ways, tuck in, go to sleep, and then get up in the morning. So I looked for them every morning and really enjoyed dawn because there they were, like pals. And they were young angelfish. As adults, they pair up. And we generally don't think of a fish as having mates that stick together. If you see fish in a restaurant or in a supermarket or even in an aquarium, you don't tend to see the kind of behavior you do out in the big aquarium, the ocean itself, where these alliances, I almost want to say friendships, but they're whatever it is, they stick together. And sometimes, curiously, it isn't just with members of the same species. I've seen personally, and others now have recorded, instances where a grouper and a moray eel will go fishing together. Fish go fishing. But a grouper this is usually led by the grouper. The grouper finds a place where he thinks a fish that he'd like to munch on might be living, and he goes over to his friend, quotes, his fishing partner, a moray eel, and gives a signal. And the moray comes out of his lair and joins the grouper for a fishing expedition. And, an eel is long and slender as compared to a grouper. It tends to be chunky and too big to go down into the places that eels can go. Mm-hmm. So, however it is that the grouper can sense where lunch might be, he stands over that, or hangs over that place, and the eel dives in and gets to where the grouper can't go, emerges with lunch, and then they both dine together. It's just amazing. Who would think that that fish can plan and team up with a member, well, not only of their own vertebrate fish allies, but grouper also team up sometimes with an octopus.
Wow.
Similarly, they go fishing together. And an octopus is really good at getting down into the crevices in a reef and can, unlike the grouper that can't navigate in those tight spaces, the grouper and the octopus team up as fishing buddies. It's just amazing. It's the gift of time, being able to spend enough time in the ocean to see these relationships. And far beyond that, it's understanding how all of the ocean and really all of the living world is connected with behaviors, with food chains, with the chemistry of life that affects the chemistry of the air, chemistry of the water itself.
One of our missions here, in addition to inspiring families to grow closer together through reading, is we really want to motivate families to work together to protect our planet. And you mentioned earlier on that, the ocean really is keeping us alive. How can we help our kids gain that love for the ocean and that interest and curiosity of the ocean that you have, so that they can, in turn, protect it?
The great thing is when people ask me, so how did you get to be a National Geographic explorer? How did you get to be a scientist? And I say, well, it's actually pretty easy. I started out as a kid, and I do what kids do. Naturally, I ask questions. Who, what, why, where, when, how? And often, why not? And I never stopped. Good scientists, explorers everywhere, they do the same. They're like kids who never quite grow up. Because I think the best thing about being a child is you want to know everything about everything. Mm-hmm. And sadly, along the way, that curiosity, that enthusiasm, that exuberance about wanting to know everything about everything, there's a tendency in today's society to tell children, be quiet, sit down, behave yourself, mm-hmm. and don't interrupt me because I'm busy. And I had parents, fortunately for me, who encouraged my curiosity and allowed me to go explore on my own, both in New Jersey, where I started out living on a small farm with nearby woods, and I could ask questions like, what is this little beetle? How does it spend its days and nights? I see you now, but what do you do when I'm not here? And what happens to trees? How do they grow? We can see the top part, but what's going on underground? And just wanting to know, and then going to the sources. People who've been studying these things for a long time have found answers to some of the questions. But when I discovered as a child moving to Florida where the Gulf of Mexico was right in my backyard, I could ask questions that I could not find in books, no answers, and nobody knew. Like, what is this little crab that I see when I go out wading around in the seagrass meadows? Nobody could say, oh, it's just a crab. But no, it was a special kind of crab it never got really big. It was only as big as the end of my thumb. And I couldn't find pictures that looked like that. And it really sparks that feeling that maybe I could do something that would make a difference. I could find out something, ask questions nobody could answer. Maybe I could answer them. You know what? That's still happening.
Yeah.
Anybody can go, even in their backyard, and start asking questions that you might be the one to find the answer. The world is so full of amazing phenomena that even looking at leaves on a tree, what's going on in there? They call that photosynthesis, green things that capture carbon dioxide and generate simple sugar, food. And that goes to become, fats and proteins, but it starts with photosynthesis. And we see it around us. Although often people don't stop to think about the miracle that generates oxygen while it's capturing carbon dioxide. But in the ocean, similarly, the forests there, some of them are big and conspicuous, like kelp forests, like the sargassum weed that floats on the surface. But it generates oxygen and captures carbon, drives the great ocean food webs. But most of this miracle of photosynthesis happens at the micro level, tiny little green things that generate oxygen, capture carbon. And it was a topic of the COP26 climate conference that I attended just last week. It was about follow the carbon dioxide. Earth once had an atmosphere that was mostly carbon dioxide. And because of photosynthesis, because of mostly life in the sea, over hundreds of millions of years, captured and sequestered that carbon dioxide, generated food that provided sustenance and still provides sustenance for life in the sea, and generated oxygen, pulled down the carbon dioxide. So now, 2021, there's just enough carbon dioxide to create this layer that continues to power photosynthesis, and along with other gases provides an important shield for in the atmosphere that makes our existence possible. I tried in the book Ocean Odyssey to think, if I were a kid, what are the questions I would want to have answered? Like, what is water? Where does the ocean come from? And these are simple questions, or at least they sound that way. Or what about the salt? Why is the ocean salty? Where did the salt come from? And how did we get to have the atmosphere that we now enjoy? We take a breath. What are we breathing? About 20% is oxygen. Tiny bit is carbon dioxide. A lot is nitrogen. And there's a mix of other tiny things, but it also today is filled with things that we, humans, have generated and put into the atmosphere, like little bits of soot, carbon, that we can't help it when we breathe. It just comes into our system. And various other chemicals that did not exist when I was a child, but they're now a part of our world.
Yeah, it's really fascinating. One of the things I love about the book, and I think of it as probably one of the greatest picture books of all times. I know people will look into it. It's almost 500 pages, and there's so much information there.
It's a heavy book.
But it is a heavy book. When I picked it up when it was delivered to the house, I'm like, what did I order that was this heavy? But it's a book that the pictures are just so amazing. And I know that they're going to capture kids and adults' interest and curiosity. And that's one of the things that I love about the book is this is a book that parents and kids can sit down and truly enjoy together and both be, just curious about together.
Well, one of the things that I'm most happy about the book is right in the middle, there is a fold-out section that really looks at the diversity of life in the sea. When people say, name some animals, you might find them naming turtles and birds, and they might remember that fish are animals. Insects, they're animals. What are animals? But in this fold-out, it's like 4 pages, double-sided. It just comes out like a big extension, and you'll see the categories of life. About half of life on Earth is found in the sea, and there are about 30 or so major divisions of animal life. Vertebrates occupy a small segment of these many categories. But who has ever heard of spoon worms or arrow worms or comb jellies or, just go down the list of variations on the theme of sponges, glass sponges, for example. And here you'll see with beautiful images, little snapshots of this enormous diversity. A lot of books about animals on Earth, but they mainly focus on our fellow vertebrates. This book, we try to show the splendor and diversity and excitement about all these little pieces, variations on the theme of what life is all about. And to then go on vicarious dives into the deepest parts of the ocean, to look at bioluminescence, creatures that glow in the dark. A lot of people are aware of fireflies, but they're not aware of that maybe 90% of life in the deep sea has some means of producing light. What a concept. When I read William Beebe's book, Half Mile Down, as a child, and he described diving in a little submersible and into places where it's dark all of the time. He said it was dark, but it really wasn't dark because of the flash, sparkle, and glow of these extraordinary creatures. It was like fireworks under the sea. And when I got to see it for myself using little submarines, it really encouraged me to go out and start building little submarines with engineers, of course. And part of that excitement is conveyed in this volume as well. I think one of the most important parts, though, in the latter part of the book, where we try to bring together, why does the ocean matter? Why should I care? If the ocean dried up tomorrow, what difference would it make to me? And to explain that the ocean really shapes climate and weather. It's a source of life. Without the ocean, we would not exist. And now the ocean, because of what we're putting in and the large amounts of life that we're taking out that we call seafood, we just put one label on all this enormous diversity of life. And if we're mindful of why it matters to keep the ocean safe, a network of protected areas, to regard the ocean with respect and not damage it. We use the ocean to throw things away. The dump site of the world it turned out to be mostly the ocean. And we talk about in the book the plastics that have really now infused all parts of the ocean and the land and water and the air, when the plastics break down to tiny particles, not just microplastics, but now nanoplastics that are so small you can't see them, but you breathe them in the air and drink them in the water, and they're throughout the ocean. So it's not just here are the problems, but here are also solutions. If you want to know what you can do individually or by working with others, I try to really address that and to say, embracing the ocean as if your life depends on it. is really important because it does.
It does. Yes, absolutely. Dr. Sylvia, I think I could speak to you for about a week, but I know that this is the beginning of a very long day of interviews for you. So I want to thank you for joining us. Where can people go to find out more about Ocean, a Global Odyssey, and also to find out more about you and what kind of work you're doing?
Well, the internet lives.
Yes, it does.
So you can go to National Geographic, their website, and look for explorers. You'll find me there. Mission Blue is the organization that I started a little bit more than 10 years ago to develop a network of areas where we really try to improve the state of the ocean, hope spots. The idea being with a network of hope, places large enough to restore and maintain the health of the blue heart of the planet. So National Geographic, Mission Blue, bookstores everywhere now are carrying the book, or you can get it online through National Geographic, but it shouldn't be too hard to find.
Yeah.
It launched just this week, so I'm thrilled to be able to share the view of what's going on down there beneath the surface of the ocean.
And there's so much going on down there, and there's so much going on in your book, and I just want to take my hats off to you and to the whole team that helped you create Ocean, a Global Odyssey.
Thank you.
Dr. Sylvia Earle, thanks so much for being with us. Please be sure to join us for the next episode of the Reading with Your Kids podcast. Our guest will be Kendara Blake. She'll be returning to the show to celebrate her brand new young adult title. It's called All These Bodies. It's going to be fantastic. You don't want to miss it. Hey, if you are the author of a fantastic children's book, whether it's a board book, picture book, middle grade novel, YA title, giant reference book, we want to help you celebrate that book and let the world know all about it. You can go to our website, readingwithyourkids.com. Click on the authors click here button at the top of the page to find out how we can help you promote your fantastic book. You can be a guest here on the podcast. You can submit your book to our certified great read panel. You can also take part in our monthly promotion program. Learn all about it by going to our website, readingwithyourkids.com. Again, click on that authors click here button at the top of the page. Scroll on down to our various services. I want to thank the folks who made today's show so wonderful. Of course, we want to thank our guest, Dr. Sylvia Earle. I really encourage you to check out Ocean, a Global Odyssey. It is just a fascinating book that you and your kids will be absolutely captivated by. For years. It's one of these books that can grow with your kids. It's just wonderful. It will give you and your family hours and hours and hours of enjoyment. Check it out today. Also want to thank my team, Alejandro Doherty, Fatima Khan, Rory Grady, Michael Murphy. I want to thank my beautiful wife for all the support she gives me. Most of all, we all want to thank you. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us today. And as always, thank you so very much for taking the time to make the world a better place by reading with your kids. I'll be looking for you in the next edition of the Reading with Your Kids podcast.